Hello, this is David Wales for sprint number 6 of Game 377. I think I did everything this week again. I'm going to go over it real quick before I show it so I don't have to go back in. So the main part I want to show is my physical for when I show it is I added in friction and I added in some gravity. I also added in the add force, so now in the tank bottom I set the values for all of these. Mass right now isn't used, but it's going to be later on, so I set that. And then in my terrain collision, I set gravity equal to 0, and then it should also be noted I have some buttons in here to change the terrains. So that's my physical work. It was just a little bit. As far as extra other stuff was, I added, obviously the adding terrains to the resource manager, get terrains, and create terrain. And then this just essentially, I should have gotten around to this last quarter, honestly, but basically it just makes it so I can easily load in models with built-in textures, essentially. So, for instance, in my Lapis content, I have now, I also have the add predefined textures, which just goes through each of the, it just goes through the model and adds in the textures that are associated with that model, or that are built into it, I suppose. And then my get predefined textures just automatically creates the graphics object flat texture and then returns it, given the number of textures that you're running and the key to the model that was already inputted up here. So that's kind of the extra stuff. I think I can show it now. So first thing you'll notice is, well, that it's building the terrains. It's loading in all of the resources here. So you see, there it goes. You'll see I fell, stopped at the terrain because I started colliding. So gravity was equal to 0, and I don't have it resetting gravity once I collide. You'll see in the command prompt it shows the terrain resource key Earth was successfully loaded, and the terrain key Mountain was successfully loaded, as well as the respective models into the model manager. So this is a cool kind of map I found. It's just Earth type map with I just found a random texture as well to go along with it, so it kind of looks nifty. So you also see my physics. I can stop pressing my buttons, and I'll slowly stop, which is the friction. You'll see if I go this way a lot, I can try turning, and it's just adding the forces. So it's rather than just setting the velocity like last week, I took your advice and did the adding of forces this week a little bit. So that works. You'll see also I put in some cottages to show off that this week. You'll see that my cottages are fully textured. So that works. You'll see that, again, you'll see my little grid down there, the collisions are still correctly being processed as they are supposed to be. And I think that's all I need to show you. Actually, one other thing, just so I can show I can change it, I'll switch it to 0, and boom, there's the mountain level. So press 9, and it switches back to Earth, and it's instantaneous, so you can tell by that it's obviously not creating the model every time. It's just switching it out, and the terrain collisions are still there. So everything seems to be working out with that. Now for the collision stuff itself, I had well, for the terrain itself, I suppose, I had just the terrain objects, which just kept a bunch of data. So I'll get more into depth in those. I'm going to try to do this really quick. the terrain cell data, which is just keeps the min and max points. I have the in my scenes. I'll go to the scenes real quick. I am creating the terrain managers, deleting it up here, and I am drawing it here. So I don't have to worry about drawing it inside the terrain. So the terrain itself is not a drawable. It is just drawn through its draw function, which is a similar thing. And it's just called in the scenes draw stage. So the processor, same as all the other processors, basically. I do the nested tests, and it eventually down here calls the terrain collision, which calls the callback for the game object, or well, for the collidable more accurately, and then the game object, and then whatever is derived from game object. So in my scene themselves, or in my level, you'll see I have the load terrain, earth, and then I can set its position, rotation, scale, all that good stuff. Set collision terrain, there's that. So that's just how you do that. The collision manager, or the terrain manager, same thing, just load terrain. It made it easy, so for the scene I would just call the current terrain managers load terrain, so it's just a big chain going down to the actual terrain here. Get current terrain, viable ABBs, which is our iterators. I tried doing that like you had said. All that basically does in get viable AABBs, it returns an iterator, so it clears the AABB list, because it's just looking at the ones that are currently being tested, I suppose. Same test as last week, but instead I'm pushing the ABB that was generated here. Or I'm pushing the ABB given the data into that list, and then I'm creating the iterators to the beginning and the end of that, and then I'm returning iterator. And then in the terrain processor, I'm just going from the beginning of those iterators to the beginning of the ABBs to the end of that list of ABBs. So that's all it's testing for. So I think that's what you had wanted, and said it was safe, so I did that. I think that's it, though. I think I have covered everything, just about. Checking here. I suppose in the resource manager itself, the create terrain is just new terrain, and then up in the destructor, I go through the list of terrain map and delete them, and then clear the terrain resource map. But yeah, that's it. I'll see you in class tomorrow. Thank you, I guess.